Ladies and gentlemen, fellas, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to take you through the first 6 wide receivers on my rankings. Then we'll do another video with the next 6, and then we'll do a video a little bit into the future on the top 20 overall. I've done the same exact thing on this channel, so go check out those videos after you watch this one, of course, maybe some other ones, of the running backs. So we have top 12 running backs already out there. Rankings will be adjusted, so we'll do any update videos as we get more news on coach speak and if we get any type of a camp or preseason, of course. Thank you all for being here. We got some top 6 receivers, and I think my list might be a little bit different than consensus right now, and I do want to start by asking you the number one question. One, how's your day going? No, not that, but I hope your day is going well. But the number one question I want to ask you is, I've been asking people in the comment section as we interact, but I haven't had this as the question of the day yet. I like to get these interactions. Who is your wide receiver one at this point in the season? I think a lot of people at running back know it's Christian McCaffrey. I think there's an argument for Saquon Barkley, but consensus is Christian McCaffrey. Would you rather have Davante Adams or Michael Thomas this year? The year that Thomas had last year is going to lead to a lot of recency bias for you to say Thomas, but that was a historical year. Will he repeat that with Davante Adams being in line for a potential 180, 190 target season? So let me know which one of those players in the comments down below. That is the question of the day, Adams or Michael Thomas. So what I'm going to be doing is going through these 6 wide receivers. I'm going to be giving you a background on what they just did in their previous year or previous years. I want to let you know what their team has been doing in terms of bringing in competition for them, bolstering up the offensive line, which would help these receivers just get deeper down the field. Let you know a little bit about these wide receivers' durability, if there's any injury concerns that should knock them down or choose one guy over another, and really where my process is in ranking them. And then also letting you know just what their top competition is in their target share. Who is the other wide receivers? Are their running backs the ones that actually matter in the passing game, and will they matter in the passing game? And also tight ends are going to matter. Are they a very consistent tight end in the offense? Are they going to steal targets away? So I want to let you know their overall target share, target competition, and just the upside that they have going into the 2020 season. It's good to look at 2018 and 2019 as sort of a reference point in what they did in their offense, but we're trying to project for the 2019 season or the 2020 season, and that's what we're trying to do in this video. So I've been hearing a lot of positive feedback as I've done these videos now for 2 straight weeks. I'm going to continue to do them, so thank you to all the new subscribers. And if you're just seeing me for the first time, or you've watched 1 or 2 of my videos, please, if you got any value from them, or you just want to help a brother out, please do hit that subscribe button. It really does help. And also the notification bell and the like button go a very long way in allowing me to reach more people. The more that you do, you probably saw this video because somebody else is doing that, so please do pass it forward. I really do appreciate that. These videos are completely free here on YouTube. I try not to put any mid-roll ads in, and just in repayment for that, I just hope that you all enjoy these, watch these videos, and really hit that subscribe button and notification bell. My number one guy right now is Davante Adams, and this is going to be the question of the day. Like we said, Adams or Michael Thomas, and it's going to be debated throughout the season. Thomas is the easy and the safe choice to put there based on what he's done the past few years and just based on his overall connection with his quarterback. But I really like Davante Adams heading into this year. So Adams last year only played 12 games. He had turf toe. He missed 4 games, played on 86% of the snaps. He had 997 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 127 targets. He saw a 30.3% target share in this Packers offense, and down the stretch in the second half of the year, it was closer to 35%. Here's the crazy fun fact for you. Davante Adams has only had 1,000 yards in his career once. He has finished with 997 yards in injury-riddled seasons twice. That exact number, he missed by 3. So very odd for Davante Adams. He had 17.6 fantasy points per game. So even missing 4 games, had playing only in 12 games, he still was number 6 overall in PPR scoring for wide receivers with 17.6 per game. He saw 16 red zone targets, which was 3rd in the league, again, missing 4 games. He was 5th in yards per route run. He's one of the best separators in the entire league. In my opinion, he is the best route runner in the entire league, up there with Stephon Diggs, Keenan Allen, Antonio Brown when he was in the league. And I think that right now you're seeing a Green Bay offense that is trending towards running the ball, but they were already doing that last year. They only threw the 15th most times per game last year, 38.1. Rodgers, although he kind of was falling off a cliff by many people's standards, he was still analytically very sharp. He was 8th in attempts, 2nd in deep ball attempts, number 1 in money throws, which takes into account your athleticism. He was ahead of Patrick Mahomes in that department, ahead of guys like Carson Wentz, Lamar Jackson, number 1 in money throws, 4th in red zone attempts, and 8th in overall touchdowns. So it was still very much able to help up and prop up a lot of these receivers. His receivers were number 1 in separation, so he fell off a cliff a little bit in his accuracy and completion percentage department. But in terms of just producing at the end of the day, he was still able to sustain Davante Adams as a top 5 wide receiver last year, even missing 4 games. Now in the offseason, the Packers did do some things. They re-signed Mercedes Lewis, a blocking tight end. They did lose Brian Bulaga to the Chargers, very big offensive line piece for them, but they signed a tackle, Rick Wagner, who hopefully can fill that void. Also got some offensive line help in the draft. In the draft, they had the worst draft possible. A.J. Dillon, a fullback in the 3rd round. They take A.J. Dillon in the 2nd round, a guy that I wouldn't have taken till like the 5th round, and they get Jordan Love, the QB. So not much help there. But for Adams, they were screaming draft a wide receiver. They don't, so it's Adams' way right now. No first-round wide receiver to take into his competition share. He looks to be in a really good spot. They ended up getting rid of Geronimo Allison, who was dust last year, rid of Jimmy Graham. That's around 116 targets to go around between Geronimo Allison and Jimmy Graham. And with Adams missing 4 games, I'm pretty sure he's going to soak up potentially even a third of those targets, believe it or not. Adams' durability, he has missed 10 games in his 6-year career. 4 of them were in 2019 last year with that turf toe injury. He missed 1 game in 2018 with a knee sprain, and then he missed 2 games in 2017 with a concussion, and then 3 games in 2015 with a high ankle sprain. So he really hasn't been able to stay healthy outside of that 2016 season and really his rookie year, but it's just a guy that's gotten some freak injuries. Turf toe is something that will linger. We've seen it with Julio, but Julio hasn't had to miss time with that turf toe. He just kind of plays through the pain. This is the biggest thing for Adams, and the reason I'm projecting him number 1 is because I really do think the guy can average around 11 to 12 targets per game, closer to 11 probably, and 180 plus targets. His competition is Devin Funchess, St. Brown, MVS, and Allen Lazard. That is his passing competition. You could throw Aaron Jones in there as a running back. You can throw Jay Sternberger, third-year tight end in there, not a lot of experience in as a tight end. Lazard last year saw a 13.7% target share, 52 total targets. He had 3 touchdowns. He was not a standout in any department in terms of separation, yards per route run, athleticism, and he's supposed to be the number 1 threat to Davante Adams' target share. Davante Adams is going to see a 30+% target share as long as he stays healthy this year. Devin Funchess only played 1 game and really part of a game before he got hurt last year. In 2018, he saw 16.3% target share. He had 4 overall touchdowns, and he ended up leading the league in drops, so not great. St. Brown missed all of last year due to an injury. He's supposed to be coming back this year, and MVS couldn't even get on the field last year, seeing just 1 red zone target, 55% of the snaps, was very much phased out towards the end of the year, and only seeing a 10.9% target share. Nobody even pushed a 15% target share in this receiving core last year, outside of Davante Adams, 30%. So it is all Davante Adams. If he stays healthy, he's just going to be fed targets, a guy who even missing 4 games was still 3rd in the league in red zone targets. Unreal. He's going to be in line for a 1,400, 12+ touchdown, 120 reception type season here if he can just stay healthy. There's just no competition. And then number 2, and really, I mean, these guys are in a tier of their own. It's 1A, 1B for me between Davante Adams and Michael Thomas, and Thomas was an absolute monster. If we just go off of last year, which you obviously can't just go off of last year when you're trying to project the following year, you have to go off of, in my opinion, the 3 previous years, the offseason moves, the new competition that's going in there, which is why I give the edge to Adams right now. But in 2019, he played all 16 games. He's definitely the more durable receiver out of the 2, not missing a game since coming into the season. Only really missed I think he had a high ankle sprain or an ankle sprain injury report in 2016 preseason. That's like the only time he's popped up on the injury report, Michael Thomas. But he played on 91% of the snaps last year, had 149 receptions on 186 targets, 33.2% target share in this offense, was number 1 in the league, broke a ton of records, 9 touchdowns, over 1,700 yards. He was 1st in receptions, targets, receiving yards. I mean, he was up there in everything. 1st in fantasy points per game. He was just so consistent. You can just throw him in there and know that you were going to get something from him because he had 10 games of 100+ yards, and he had 12 of 16 games of either having 10 receptions, a touchdown, or 100+ yards. He just produced for you week in and week out. He faced some notable cornerbacks too. I mean, James Bradbury twice, the former now Carolina Panther, Byron Jones, the Dallas Cowboys last year, Marcus Peters, who had a big bounce back year, faced AJ Boye and Patrick Peterson, who were on sort of downsides of their careers, but still top names in the league. He was just eating everybody up. And this was with the Saints only throwing the 16th most times per game at 37.9. That's how much of a target share he had. 33% is nuts. Last year, Drew Brees was 27th in attempts. He threw the ball 34.4 times per game, 270.8 yards per game, and a 7.1% touchdown rate. He was still the number 1 player in the entire league, Drew Brees, when he was out there in true completion percentage, and number 3 in pressure completion percentage. The man, although he's aging, can still play football. Now, in terms of threats to Michael Thomas, they did sign Emmanuel Sanders, and Emmanuel Sanders last year between 2 teams, the Broncos and the 49ers, did see an 18.3% target share, average about 51 yards per game, a little under 6 targets per game, and 11 fantasy points per game. So that's not a major threat. Everywhere Emmanuel Sanders has been, he's sort of been like a wide receiver 1, but always been asked to play the wide receiver 2 role. He's just such a good player, whether it was when he came into the league with Antonio Brown there, and then he goes to Denver with Demaryius Thomas, and then he goes last year with Courtland Sutton to start the year, right? He's always been this wide receiver 2, but really has the potential to be a wide receiver 1, so he should snag somewhere between 15 and 18 to 20% of the target share, but that shouldn't impact too much of Michael Thomas. They ended up losing Ted Ginn Jr., which I don't think they're going to care about. He signed a deal with the Bears, and in the NFL draft, they spent their 1st-round pick on Cesar Ruiz, who's a interior offensive lineman, should help that team, 3rd-round pick on Adam Trautman, and then they took a quarterback who's very similar to Taysom Hill in the 7th round. So really in the offseason, pretty much all that happened was for Michael Thomas's purposes. They ended up losing Ted Ginn, they ended up taking on Emmanuel Sanders, and they signed a couple of offensive linemen, one through the draft, and then Andrew Pettis signed a 5-year, $57 million deal. For the rest of Michael Thomas's target competition outside of Emmanuel Sanders, probably projecting to see somewhere between 16 to 20% of the target share, let's call it 18%. You do have Alvin Kamara as probably the next biggest threat, if not the biggest threat. He saw 6.9 targets per game last year, 38 yards per game in the receiving game, 5.8 receptions per game, in what was considered a down year for Kamara, going over 700 receiving yards. But the thing is, Kamara's receptions for the most part are going to be between -2, so behind the line of scrimmage, and like 4 yards, so not really that deep downfield, threatening the overall upside in yards per catch of Michael Thomas. Jared Cook broke out onto the scene last year. I mean, he missed 2 games and he still had over 700 yards. He still had 9 touchdowns on 65 targets. targets. He saw a 13.5% target share. So what you're probably going to see in this offense is somewhere around Emmanuel Sanders floating between 20% target share, 18%. You'll probably have somebody like Alvin Kamara floating very similarly there, but then Michael Thomas, even since he's due to regress, still seeing in the upper 20s to low 30s. Like Michael Thomas seeing 28 to 30% of the target share should be expected at this point in this offense. He's such a durable receiver that it's really hard not to like him. He is the 1B to the 1A of Devontae Adams for me. Now let's get into our number 3 wide receiver overall. Now before I break down into Julio, a big old subscribe button is about to pop up on the screen. Take 1 second, bottom right hand corner, click that. Just a couple seconds of your time. And also, if you are so generous to hit the notification bell, it will let you know when I update new videos and upload new videos, which then once you watch them, and if you come through the notification, it then shows it to more people because YouTube's going, oh, this is actually working. People want to watch your videos, right? So if you do get value from this video so far and you like what I'm doing here, please do hit that subscribe button. Again, as a creator, it goes the longest way in allowing me to grow my channel and grow my business, my YouTube creator business, online business here. So thank you so much. Julio Jones played in 15 games in the 2019 season, played on 79% of the snaps. He caught 99 balls, just one away from the triple digits of 100, 99 balls for just under 1,400 yards and 12 touchdowns, 156 targets, and a 25.7% target share. This was on an offense in Atlanta that passed the most per game at 45.9 times per game. He was second in targets behind Thomas, second in deep targets with 2.1 per contest. He was second in overall yards behind Thomas, third in fantasy points per game at 18.3, even though he missed a game. And then he was very impressive in a lot of different areas, yards per route run. He was only 85th in separation per target, which we're not really known for Julio to be the biggest separator of all, right? He's just at this point in his career, although he came out of college running a 4.39, at this point in his career, he's a bigger body guy. I mean, he's going into his 10th year in the NFL, so he's not really supposed to get too much separation as much as his size plays to his advantage, a 230-pound massive wide receiver. Matt Ryan last year threw the third most times per game, 297.7 yards per game. I mean, this was still a high-flying Atlanta offense. It just stunk all around on the defensive side, and they stalled in the red zone at times like they have for really the past 3 years. 26 touchdowns. He was 26th in protection, which was the big thing, while some of their early draft picks on the offensive line last year, early in the season and really in the preseason, and he was number 3 in red zone attempts. So this offense clicked last year, number 1 passing offense in attempts per game, and you're going to see probably similar things heading into this year as they've revamped the offense. How did they revamp the offense? On the offseason, they added Todd Gurley, and they cut Devonta Freeman, who's probably an upgrade at this point, on a 1-year deal for Todd Gurley. They really didn't add anything else behind him. They did a 5th-round tenure on Brian Hill to be pretty much the backup at this point, and they signed Hayden Hurst, and they lost Austin Hooper. So they lost their running back and their tight end, and in my opinion, they added an upgrade at running back in Todd Gurley, and also in my opinion, they added an upgrade at tight end in Hayden Hurst. Yes, I personally think Hayden Hurst is better than Austin Hooper. Do the numbers show that? No, because Hayden Hurst was a backup tight end on a run-first offense, and Austin Hooper was the starting tight end on the number 1 offense when it comes to passing. It's the complete opposite. The Ravens were number 1 in running offense, and then you have Atlanta number 1 in passing offense. So trying to make that comparison of, oh yeah, but look at the numbers last year, it doesn't matter. They were on complete opposite situations. I think that Hayden Hurst, if you look at his overall draft capital, his overall athletic profile, he is the more athletic and probably better tight end, and we should see that this year. In the NFL draft, the Falcons really didn't do much. They signed a center, Matt Hennessy, in the 3rd round. Julio has missed 18 games in his 9-year career. Crazy that he's been in the league already for 9 years, but 11 of those games did come when he fractured his foot, I believe it was, in the 2013 season. So he's only really missed 7 games in 8 years, which is pretty strong. He's always been injured with this turf toe. His most recent injuries were 1 in 2019 with a shoulder, 2 in 2016 with a toe sprain. So lately he's been able to just play through injuries, and he normally is known as a guy who does. Now he does have some target competition, namely Calvin Ridley, who's very much set to take that leap and maybe the Chris Godwin breakout type of year that we saw last year. 67 yards per game, 7 touchdowns through 13 games for Ridley, 4.8 receptions per game on a 17.7% target share. He had his breakout rookie year. He had a very solid and strong sophomore year, and now that jump is coming for his junior year in the NFL. After that, you do have Hayden Hurst, who only saw 30 catches on 40 targets last year and 3 touchdowns, but again, he was a backup in a run-first offense. When you look at the actual efficiency numbers, he was the 7th tight end in yards per target, and he was 6th in yards per route run. 6th and 7th ranking in the entire NFL for a backup tight end. That's how athletic this guy was at getting separation and being efficient with his targets. Last year, Russell Gage took on the Mohamed Sanu role once midseason Mohamed Sanu got shipped off to the New England Patriots, and he saw 8 targets per game over his last 6 games, and notably his 13 target game to end the year. He wasn't really efficient with his targets overall, dropped a touchdown at one point last year, but Russell Gage is going to be set to take on this slot role in this offense for a good chunk of the time for a team that does run a ton of 4 and 3 wide receiver sets. So Julio Jones is as consistent as ever. I mean, he's coming into his 10th league, so it's just crazy to think that he should continue to be a top 3 to 5 wide receiver in the league, but he just continues to put up those numbers, and he just plays through injuries. He's going to be about 31 and a half to 32 years old before the season starts, and although that's a downturn of a lot of people's career, Julio right now is just proving a ton of people wrong based on his upside and speeds combination that continues to live on throughout his 10-year career in the NFL. He is my number 3 wide receiver. So before I break down the new Arizona Cardinal DeAndre Hopkins, please do check out in the description below Monkey Knife Fight offers. They are the picture above the logo and the promo code down below. It's a prop betting site. So if you don't know what prop bets are for DeAndre Hopkins, say week 1, they say over under 82 receiving yards. If you think it's under, you put the under, and if it hits, you win some money. If you think it's over that, you put the over. If it hits, you win some money. Now, to get you started, if you put a $10 minimum deposit, they will send you $15 for free if you use the promo code Vetri in the link down below in the description. Or if you want to put in $50, they'll send you $55. So they'll 100% match you up to $50 and throw in an extra $5. You can not do this for not only the NFL, but any sport you care to do so. It's the 3rd largest fantasy sports operating site in the world and the number 1 fastest growing in North America. They're a legitimate site. I wouldn't be telling you about them if they weren't. Check out Monkey Knife Fight. It's a ton of fun. What are you waiting for? Go get your free money. Now let's get back to the video. So Hopkins with the Texans in 2019 played 15 games. He played on 100% of the snaps. So he was the number 1 receiver in route participation, had over 100 receptions and over 1,100 yards. 7 touchdowns, 30.9% target share, was second only behind Michael Thomas. Arizona last year, the new team that he's on now, threw the 17th most times per game at 37.8, but they played at a very, very fast pace. Hopkins finished 4th overall in fantasy points per game, even missing a game at 17.8. He only had 7 red zone receptions, but he was lucky that all 7 ended up being touchdowns last year. Kyler Murray in his 2019 rookie season was 9th in attempts. He saw 232.6 yards per game and 20 overall touchdowns. He was number 3 in money throws, which takes into account your athleticism and ability to extend the play. And he saw 4.4 deep attempts per game. That helps Hopkins because that was 9th in the league. So in 2019 offseason, the Cardinals did do a lot. Outside of adding Hopkins, they ended up signing a 1-year deal to Larry Fitzgerald. They put the transition tag on Kenyon Drake, and they signed some offensive linemen and re-signed some offensive linemen in DJ Humphries and Justin Murray. They lost David Johnson, which I'm sure they're happy about that contract leaving. And then Damiere Byrd, a wide receiver, ended up going to the Patriots. In the NFL draft, they got a steal in Josh Jones out of Houston, an offensive tackle in the 3rd round who was touted to be a first-round talent. And then Eno Benjamin, a running back in the 7th round. So the durability, DeAndre Hopkins missed 1 game last year, and then he also missed 1 game in 2017. 2017 was a calf strain, but he's known to play through injuries. I mean, he's had sprained and fractured ribs in the past. He's had a torn wrist that he's playing through. So even if he's not completely healthy, you can trust him to be out there for your fantasy team. Target competition this year will be a lot more than last year, at least out of Houston. Houston didn't have a lot of pass catching threats at the running back, or at least they didn't use Duke Johnson a lot. Will Fuller was often banged up. Kenny Stills wasn't getting any separation. So what you're going to have now for DeAndre Hopkins is Christian Kirk and Larry Fitzgerald, both of which saw over 100 targets last year. Christian Kirk last year missed 3 games and still saw 108 targets, a 24.5% target share on 98.5% of the snap. Larry Fitzgerald, playing all 16 games, the old man himself back on a 1-year, $11 million deal, saw 109 targets and 20.6% of the snaps. And then Kenyon Drake overall last year saw 50 targets, and much of those came once he moved to Arizona, 3.6 receptions per game on 5 targets per game. So it's going to be very interesting for Hopkins because you're coming into a situation where 2 receivers are seeing over 20+% of the target share, and surely Hopkins will now likely either lead or co-lead in the targets on this team, and I would expect him to lead. But if that's the case, it's going to be taking a ton away from Larry Fitz, who likely comes off the field a little bit more, and a lot away from Christian Kirk, which I don't know if Murray's going to very quickly just stop throwing the ball to Christian Kirk. So there is an overall targets concern for DeAndre Hopkins, maybe not red zone targets concern, but targets concern. So that puts him down to number 4 for me for the 2020 fantasy football season. And big old subscribe button just popped up on the screen. Take a few seconds, hit that as we get into Tyreek Hill, who did miss 4 games last year. Tyreek Hill missing 4 games last year were the only 4 of his career with a dislocated clavicle, his shoulder, whatever you want to call it. In his 12 games in 2019, he played on 74% of the snaps. He returned in a major way, I believe, scoring 2 touchdowns in that game, 58 receptions on 88 targets, a 21.9% target share, and 7 touchdowns. He saw just under 5 receptions per game, 72 yards per game, and 15.7 fantasy points per game, was 11th in the league last year. He was 6th in separation and 5th in fantasy points per route run. So as long as he was able to run more routes, because he missed 4 games last year, you do expect him to actually put up a little bit more numbers and maybe actually finish within the top 8 in wide receivers last year. Now, Mahomes in 2019 was great as ever, 34.6 attempts per game, 287.9 yards per game, 26 touchdowns, and a very eye-popping 8.6 yards per attempt. In the offseason, in terms of what the Chiefs did, not much in free agency. They ended up signing DeAndre Washington, which who knows if they'll actually use him now since they took Clyde Edwards-Helaire with their first overall pick. They picked up Damian Williams' option the final year of his contract, and they really didn't lose anybody. They re-signed Demarcus Robinson for a 1-year deal. They restructured Sammy Watkins' contract, and in the NFL draft, outside of getting Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the first round, they took a 3rd-round tackle in Lucas Niang. So what does the target competition look like for Tyreek Hill? There is a lot. Tyreek Hill's not even the number 1 receiver on this team. If you're talking about legit receivers, yes, he is, but if you're talking about including including tight ends in that, Travis Kelce is the number one receiver on this team, and he has been for Patrick Mahomes. Travis Kelce played 94% of the snaps. He's just durable there. 97 receptions, over 1,200 yards, and 6 touchdowns. He was so quiet last year, in my opinion. It seemed like he wasn't even having a huge year, and he was a tight end who went over 1,200 yards on 24.4% target share and 30.2% of the red zone targets. This man saw 136 targets and caught 97 of them as a tight end, and it seemed like he just didn't even have a great season. That's just nuts that that's status quo for Travis Kelce. Now, outside of that, you saw Sammy Watkins in 2019 have the big week 1 and then the big playoffs, but nothing really in between. He had 52 receptions, 3 touchdowns on 90 total targets. He was third on this team with a 19.7% target share behind Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. There was a hodgepodge of DeMarcus Robinson, Mecole Hardman coming on down the stretch, a lot of big plays out of both of those guys, but they were really never consistent overall. So with Tyreek Hill coming in here as my number 5 wide receiver, I am a little bit sketched out. He's definitely a number 5 guy in best ball leagues and PPR formats, so he's going to be a lot better of an option for you in half PPR and just standard no PPR. But in PPR formats, you might want to jump him down a little bit because, look, if he stays healthy, he only might catch 80 balls, whereas a lot of other guys ahead of him or around him even might catch 95, 100 plus balls, like a Chris Godwin, who's still going to come up on this list, and some other guys that we haven't mentioned yet. Factoring all the different league types and the upside of Travis Kelce and just the offense that he's in, if he plays a full 16 games last year, you're going to prorate his stats out to being somewhere around an 1,150 yard season with somewhere around 75 receptions and 11 touchdowns, which is going to be not 11th in fantasy points per game, but finish somewhere around the top 8, top 6. So on a healthy season for Tyreek Hill, I feel really good about him here at the number 5 spot. Shout out Penn State. Penn State's own Chris Godwin last year broke out onto the scene in his 3rd year in the league, just being the number 2 wide receiver in fantasy points per game. He was an absolute monster, and he only played in 14 games due to some injuries. 96% of the snaps, he had 86 receptions for over 1,300 yards and 9 touchdowns, 22.2% target share, and a 20% red zone target share. Second in fantasy points per game, like I said, with 19.6. He was number 1 in yards after the catch with 574 total yards after the catch, and number 3 in yards per game at 95.2. Tampa Bay threw the 3rd most times last year, which you probably don't see this year as you have no more Jameis Winston out there at 42.3 times. Brady in 2019, though, he did have 253.6 yards per game. He threw the 4th most times, so 39.3, and he was number 1 in red zone attempts at 6.3 per contest, threw for 24 touchdowns. The big concerns with Brady were just his accuracy. He was 32nd in accuracy in a clean pocket, and he was 17th out of all the quarterbacks in the league in true passer rating. Now, in the offseason, the Bucs clearly improved their offense. They ended up getting Tom Brady. They get Gronk to come out of retirement and trade for him. They end up re-signing Joe Hay, a offensive lineman, and in the draft, they get Tristan Wirfs, who was projected to go top 5 overall to the Giants. They get him. They trade up 1 pick, and they end up getting him at 13th overall for Tom Brady. They get Keyshawn Vaughn, a good pass protector and pass-catching running back in the 3rd round, and they also take Raymond Calais, who's also a pass-catching back in the 7th round, running back, Tyler Johnson, a wide receiver in the 5th round. So they did a lot in this draft to shore up their offense. They did a lot in this draft to get protection for Tom Brady, and also just some familiarity with Rob Gronkowski out there. Their subtractions were Brashad Perriman, who's now on the Jets, and Jameis Winston, who's now a backup for the division rival Saints. Chris Godwin's only missed 2 games in his career, both last year during his 3-year career with a hamstring strain. He appeared on the injury report for 4 more weeks with a hip strain last year, but it didn't seem to really limit him. No concerns over his durability there. And finally, the target competition. Obviously, there's a lot of mouths to feed out there, starting with Mike Evans. Mike Evans played on 90% of the snaps last year. He had a great year, 67 receptions, over 1,150 yards, and 8 touchdowns, 23.8% target share, was more than Chris Godwin, and a 27.7% red zone target share was by far more than Chris Godwin because Evans was just a bigger receiver when it comes to weight and just overall size. After that, you had Justin Watson last year, who Justin Watson and Scotty Miller were operating as the wide receiver 4s on this offense since they still had Brashad Perriman. Watson had 15 receptions on 26 targets, saw just a 9.8% target share, and Scotty Miller only played 25% of the snaps, but he saw a 7.1% target share. He saw 26 targets, 11 of those targets were deep shots of 20 or more yards. So he is this Brashad Perriman burner down the field. You might see some upside out of Scotty Miller here and there if Brady can connect with him. And then they have all their tight ends, Cameron Brate, OJ Howard playing 80% of the snaps last year, seeing a 10.3% target share, 459 total yards and a touchdown on 34 receptions. And now you have Gronk coming out of retirement, missing all of last year, to rekindle his relationship with Tom Brady. So a lot of mouths to feed out there. I still think Chris Godwin, who was 2nd overall last year, is going to regress, but not enough for me to push him down to like 8 or 9 because this offense is just so good. And he's really in the prime of his career, going to be 24 and a half years old once the season starts again out of Penn State. So Godwin is my number 6 wide receiver in PPR formats. So that's it. That's the first 6. In my next video, I'll be going through 7 through 12. I hope you watched this entire video. If you did, let me know in the comments, and let me know, Devontae Adams or Michael Thomas in PPR formats, who is your wide receiver 1 this year? If it's somebody else for some reason, let me know that as well. Eager to hear what you all have to say for that. Hit the subscribe button. Big old one's about to pop up on the screen. Bottom right-hand corner, hit that subscribe button, then hit the bell, and then while you're at it, hit the like button. All those things really do help me. I appreciate you being here up until this point of the video. Check out the free rookie rankings down below in the description, and if you're interested in the draft guide, which depending on when you're watching this is either down in the description or the free sign-up sheet is down there so you can be notified of when it does drop, get a little bit of an early release for it, check out the description down below for that. If you want to support me over on Patreon, I put a ton of content out over there for daily fantasy sports, and they're going to have even more for the fantasy sports, so you can check that out as well. So keep an eye on the description stuff. That draft guide is coming. Hit the subscribe button. Do it all. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and peace out, game.